In the dusty courthouse square of Redford Crossing, a broke ex-bank examiner named June Calloway was about to stumble into a conspiracy that had been hidden for 4 years. It all began with a 40-cent bid at an auction, but the real shock came when she confronted a vault that had killed the last man who tried to open it. June wasn't just another scavenger combing through Depression-era ruins. She had spent 6 years as a federal bank examiner, so thorough that she was pushed out after exposing fraud in St. Louis. When she noticed unfinished ledgers, forged records, and a vault lock deliberately sabotaged, she didn't realize she was uncovering a cover-up run by the men who had profited from foreclosures. Determined, she teamed up with a reluctant locksmith, a truth-hungry reporter, and a clockmaker with a knack for spotting lies in machinery. Opening that vault would trigger a fight to return stolen land to 27 families. The vault didn't hold money, but something far more dangerous. Proof that Redford Crossing's so-called rescue committee had collapsed the bank on purpose to seize farms cheaply, and a dead woman's clever device that preserved the evidence. For June, what started as scrapping a condemned building turned into a battle for justice. And what she found proved that sometimes the most valuable treasure isn't wealth, it's the truth. It was a masterpiece of engineering, even covered in soot and cobwebs. 6 feet tall, circular, with a wheel lock mechanism and a time lock mounted above it like a mechanical conscience. The manufacturer's plate was still visible, Whitmore & Sons, Cincinnati. Patent 1924, but it was the crack that caught my attention. A hairline fracture running from the marble doorframe into the vault's steel casing, so fine you'd miss it if you weren't looking. And I was always looking. That's what 6 years as a federal bank examiner teaches you, how to spot the seam in the lie. I ran my finger along the crack. The steel felt cold, even in the stifling heat. The fracture didn't match the rest of the building's damage. It was too precise, too deliberate. Behind me, something scraped against the floor. I spun around, hand already reaching for the nail file in my pocket, the only weapon I owned. A dog stood in the doorway, medium-sized, dusty brown, with one ear that flopped and one that stood up straight. He was painfully thin, ribs showing through his coat. But his eyes were bright and alert. "You're trespassing," I told him. He walked past me, nails clicking on the marble, and sat down directly in front of the vault door. Then he looked at me as if to say, "Well, aren't you going to open it?" "Can't," I said. Time lock. Even if I had the combination, the dog settled onto his haunches, apparently prepared to wait. I left him there and moved to the desk. The open ledger was from 1929, the year everything went wrong. I flipped through the pages carefully. Standard entries at first. Deposits, withdrawals, loan payments, everything neat and orderly in 3 different hands. Then, on August 14th, the entries stopped. Not at the end of a page. Not at the end of a day. Mid-line. A deposit notation that read, "Transfer from farm cred," and then nothing. Just a blank space where the rest should have been, and a torn edge where someone had ripped the ribbon from the typewriter. August 14th, 1929. The day before the bank closed. 2 months before the market crashed, but someone here in Redford Crossing had known it was coming. Had known and had moved fast. I checked the other ledgers stacked against the wall. All of them stopped on the same date. All of them mid-entry, as if time itself had jammed. The dog whined softly. "I know," I said. "Something's wrong with this picture." I spent the next hour documenting what I could see. The crack in the vault frame. I traced it with a pencil on butcher paper from my bag. The ledgers. I noted dates and account numbers. The time lock mechanism, frozen at 7:43. Though whether that was AM or PM, I couldn't tell. The light was failing when I heard footsteps outside. I looked up to see Silas Grange silhouetted in the doorway, hat in hand. "Thought I might find you here." He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "Making progress?" "Just taking inventory." His eyes went to the ledgers, then to the vault. "Find anything interesting?" "Dust, rats, the usual." "No valuables?" "Nothing in the vault." He said it casually, but I could hear the tension underneath. "Vault sealed. Time lock's broken." Ah, yes, tragic business that. He moved closer and I noticed his hands, manicured, but his knuckles were white where he gripped his hat. After Raymond's death, we thought it best to leave it alone. Out of respect, of course. There's nothing in there worth dying for, Miss Calloway. Just old papers, worthless bonds. The sort of thing that would only cause pain if dragged back into the light. I met his eyes. Is that concern for my safety, Mr. Grange? Or advice? Both. He placed his hat back on his head, tugging the brim just so. This town's finally healing. People are moving forward. Sometimes the past needs to stay buried. After he left, I stood there in the gathering dark, listening to the dog's steady breathing. The animal hadn't moved from his post by the vault, and I got the feeling he understood something I was only beginning to suspect. This wasn't a failed bank. This was a crime scene. And the vault everyone was afraid to open? It wasn't sealed to keep people out. It was sealed to keep something in. I found Amos Reed's workshop behind Grady's livery, in a shed that looked like it had been cobbled together from 3 different buildings. A hand-painted sign over the door read, "A. Reed, locksmith, safes, vaults, troubled mechanisms." The walls inside were papered with sketches, locks dissected into their component parts, springs and tumblers rendered in careful pencil. A workbench ran the length of one wall, covered in tools, so precisely organized they looked like a surgeon's kit. Amos himself was seated at the bench, a jeweler's loop screwed into one eye, working on something small and brass that ticked when he turned it. He was somewhere past 70, with hands that didn't shake and eyes that missed nothing. He looked up when I knocked. "Help you?" "I'm June Calloway. I bought the Redford Bank building yesterday." His expression didn't change, but his hands stopped moving. "That's so. I need someone to assess the vault. The time lock's compromised, and I think there might be structural issues with the—" "No," I blinked. "I haven't told you what I'm paying." "Don't matter what you're paying." He set down his tools with the careful precision of a man who respected the weight of things. "I don't touch that vault. May I ask why?" "Because Raymond Price didn't die in an accident, Miss Calloway. And I'm not in the business of finishing what someone else started." He said it matter-of-factly, the way you'd mention rain or taxes. But the words hung in the air like smoke. I pulled the butcher paper from my bag and spread it on his workbench, smoothing the creases. This is the fracture pattern in the vault frame. It runs from the marble surround into the steel casing. The crack's too clean for structural failure. And look here, I pointed to where I'd noted the measurements. The time lock housing has fresh tool marks. Someone worked on it after 1929. Amos studied the tracing for a long moment. Then he removed his loupe and looked at me directly. "Why do you care?" "Because my father lost his store when that bank failed. Lost everything. I want to know why, truth or revenge. I'll take either, but I'd prefer the truth." He almost smiled at that. "Federal examiner, weren't you?" "Was. Got blackballed for being inconveniently thorough. And you came back here. Didn't have anywhere else to go." Amos folded his hands. "And I noticed the scars, old burns on his forearms, the kind you get from handling hot metal. I served in France. Sappers. We dug tunnels under German lines and blew them to hell. Came back and figured I'd work with locks instead. Things meant to keep people safe instead of buried." He stood slowly, joints protesting, and moved to a cabinet. From it he pulled a leather-bound notebook, its pages thick with sketches and notes. "Railroad detectives came to me in 22. Wanted me to open union safes, help them find organizers. I did it. Told myself it was just work, just mechanisms." He opened the notebook to a page covered in lock diagrams. 3 men died because I opened those safes. Not by my hand, but by my skill. I'm not asking you to hurt anyone, Mr. Reed. No, you're asking me to open a vault that powerful men want to stay closed. That's the same thing, different wrapper." He turned a page, and I saw a sketch of a time lock mechanism. "But I'll tell you what I know. Mabel Witt designed that vault. She was the bank's founder, widow woman, brilliant with numbers and mechanisms. Didn't trust men with her depositors' money, so she built a system no one could rob, not even her. And Raymond Price was her assistant. When she died in 28, he took over as manager. 6 months later, he's dead in that vault. and the rescue committees buying up farms for pennies. Amos tapped the sketch. A Whitmore time lock doesn't malfunction. Not unless someone makes it malfunction. Will you at least look at it? He studied me for a long time. I could see him weighing something. Duty against caution, craft against consequence. I'll visit the site tomorrow at dawn, he finally said. But I have conditions. First, no explosives. We do this right or not at all. Second, nothing we find stays secret. We tell the sheriff regardless of who it implicates. Agreed. And third, he looked at me hard. If I say we stop, we stop. Some doors are locked for a reason, Miss Calloway. Sometimes the only moral choice is to walk away. I understand. Do you? He closed his notebook. Because once we start, there's no putting this back in the bottle. You sure you want to know what's behind that steel? I thought about my father's face the day the bank seized the store. Thought about the ledgers stopping mid-line, the town's silence, Silas Grange's white knuckles. I'm sure. Then I'll see you at dawn. Bring a lantern and something to take notes with. And Miss Calloway? He walked me to the door. That dog you mentioned, the one that won't leave the vault. Feed him. Animals know things. If he's standing guard, there's something worth guarding. Amos arrived at 5:47 a.m. with a leather tool case and the posture of a man who approached every lock like it might teach him something. The dog, I'd started thinking of him as Copper, after the dust color of his coat, lifted his head when we entered but didn't move from his post. Smart animal, Amos observed. Knows the important spot when he sees it. He set down his case and pulled out a tuning fork of all things. At my questioning look, he explained, safe men used to use stethoscopes. But I learned from a watchmaker in Lyon. Sound travels through metal differently, depending on what's behind it. He struck the fork against his palm and held it to the vault door at various points. Ear pressed close. I watched him work in silence, noting how his expression shifted. Surprise, then interest, then something that looked like respect. Well? I asked when he'd made a complete circuit. Two things. First, that time lock's ticking wrong. Losing about 3 seconds every minute. Someone filed down an escapement tooth. Deliberate sabotage. Not where. He moved to the crack I'd traced. Second, this fracture. It's not damage. It's a seam. There's a double wall here. An inner chamber behind the main vault. My heart kicked. Can you open it? The outer vault, probably. But if that inner chamber's got its own lock... He trailed off, and I saw him calculating angles, mechanisms, risks. That's when I heard the camera shutter click. We both turned. A woman stood in the doorway, speed graphic in hand, dark hair escaping from under a felt hat. She lowered the camera and grinned. Ria Dominguez, Kansas City Journal. I'm doing a piece on the woman who bought a bank for 40 cents. She stepped inside, already scanning the space with a journalist's hungry eyes. Mind if I get a few shots? Actually, too late. She'd already moved to the vault, capturing Copper in profile against the steel. Tell me, Miss Calloway, what made you buy Redford's most notorious building? Fixtures, I said flatly. Resale value. She wasn't buying it. Her eyes went to the ledgers, then to Amos's tools. And you're just inventorying? Amos gave me a look that said, your call. I made a decision. Show her the transfer stamps. Ria's attention sharpened. I walked her to the desk and opened one of the 1929 ledgers, pointing to the loan entries. These stamps mark when property titles transferred to the bank after foreclosure. See the dates? She leaned in, squinting. August 15th through October, right around the crash. Right. Now look at the stamps themselves. She studied them, then looked up sharply. These aren't the same stamp. The ink's different weights, and the date wheels don't align the same. Someone made multiple stamps, I said. Legitimate banks don't do that. It's a control measure, only one stamp, one person authorized to use it. So these are forgeries. Her hand was already reaching for her camera, or someone was backdating transfers, making failed loans look like they defaulted earlier than they did. I showed her 3 more examples, each one slightly different. Each one from the weeks after August 14th, Ria photographed them all, her earlier levity gone. This was a woman who knew what evidence looked like. There's more, Amos said quietly. He'd moved to the notice board, near what used to be the teller windows. This permit, we joined him. A piece of paper, official-looking, was pinned to the board. Temporary demolition permit, Redford Bank Building. Main Street, approved for structural safety, authorized S. Grange, County Treasurer. Rhea leaned close. That's signed in pencil. Permits are signed in ink, I said. Pencil can be erased, changed, backdated, or forged later, Rhea finished. She photographed it from 3 angles. When was this posted? It wasn't here yesterday, I was certain. I'd inventoried every surface. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The sound of boots on the front steps made all 3 of us turn. Sheriff Tom Hale filled the doorway, thumbs hooked in his belt. Expression somewhere between apologetic and official, Miss Calloway. He nodded to Amos. Then Rhea. Ma'am, Amos, Sheriff, received a complaint about unauthorized entry to a condemned structure. Need to ask you folks to clear out while I conduct a safety inspection. I pulled the deed from my pocket. The building's mine, purchased at county auction. I'm conducting an authorized inventory. Hale looked at the deed, then at the vault, then at the demolition permit on the wall. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe, or resignation. That may be, but the structure's been deemed unsafe. Can't have civilians inside until it's been properly assessed. By whom? Rhea had her notebook out. For the record, Sheriff. County Building Inspector. He shifted uncomfortably. Look, I don't make the rules, I just... Copper growled. We all looked at the dog. He'd risen from his spot, hackles up, staring directly at the sheriff. Not aggressive, warning. Hale took an involuntary step back. That dog licensed? He's not mine, I said. He just showed up. Well, he needs to be removed. Ordinance against strays in... I'll license him, Rhea said suddenly. Consider him mine. Now what about that building inspection? Hale's jaw tightened. He looked at each of us in turn, and I could see the calculation happening. He was a decent man, I thought. But decent men could be leaned on. I'll need to see your full documentation, Miss Calloway. Deed, any permits you've secured, inspection waivers. He pulled a small pad from his pocket, wrote something, tore off the page and handed it to me. You can bring those by my office. End of business today, I took the paper. It was blank except for an address. Records annex, county building, basement. Our eyes met. He gave the slightest nod, then tipped his hat. Ladies, Amos, you have till sundown to secure this property. After he left, Rhea let out a breath. That was close. No, Amos said, still studying the door. That was permission. I looked at the blank note again, understanding blooming. Hale couldn't openly defy Silas Grange, but he could point me towards something. The records annex, basement level. Whatever I needed to see, it was there. We've got less than 12 hours, I said. Amos, can you map the vault's mechanisms by then?
Can try.
But if that demolition permit's real, it's not, Rhea said. She was looking at it again through her camera's viewfinder. Wrong form number. This is a residential permit altered for commercial use. I've seen enough building permits to spot a fake. Can you prove it? With a few phone calls and a look at the county files. Absolutely, she grinned, fierce and bright. Miss Calloway, I came here for a human interest piece. I'm leaving with a corruption story. This is why I got into journalism. I looked at Amos. What do you need? Time, mostly. And quiet? That inner chamber, if it's what I think it is, was designed by Mabel Witt herself. That means it's not just locked. It's got a message. A message. He tapped the time lock. Every safe is a conversation. The maker speaks to the opener, tells them what they need to know. He pulled out his sketch pad. This one's been whispering since 1929. Time we finally listened. Copper settled back in front of the vault, as if satisfied that we understood our assignment. I had till sundown to visit the records annex. Till Monday for Rhea to expose the permit fraud. And however long it took for Amos to hear what a dead woman's mechanism had been trying to say for 4 years. Outside, the dust was already rising with the morning heat. Somewhere, Silas Grange was making phone calls. Somewhere, men who'd built fortunes on other people's desperation were sharpening their knives. But inside the bank, in the cool shadow of a vault that held something other than money, we were finally asking the right questions. And in Redford Crossing, questions were dangerous things. Leo Chen's shop occupied a narrow building wedged between the telegraph office and a haberdashery that had been closed since '31. The sign in the window read, "El Chen, horologist, clocks, chronometers, troubled time." Inside was a symphony of ticking. Grandfather clocks lined one wall, shelf clocks covered another, and pocket watches hung from hooks like mechanical fruit. The sound wasn't chaotic. Each timepiece contributed its own rhythm to a larger pattern that was almost musical. Leo himself stood at a workbench beneath a window, illuminated by afternoon light. He was perhaps 40, with steady hands and the kind of focus that made the rest of the world disappear. He looked up when the bell over the door chimed. "Miss Calloway." He set down a tiny gear. "Ria told me you'd be coming. She moves fast. Journalists usually do." He gestured to the workbench. "Show me what you have." I spread out the rubbings I'd made of the vault's time-lock dial and mechanism housing. Leo studied them in silence, occasionally pulling a jeweler's loupe to his eye, or comparing my sketches to diagrams in a leather-bound reference book. "This is beautiful work," he said finally. Mabel Witt understood escapements the way most people understand breathing, but someone's violated it. Amos said the same thing. Leo pointed to a detail in my rubbing. "Here, this tooth on the escapement wheel. See how it's shorter than the others? That's not wear, that's deliberate filing. It makes the mechanism lose approximately 3 seconds per minute. Why would someone do that? To delay the unlock." He pulled out a clean sheet of paper and began sketching with remarkable speed. "Time locks are designed to open at a preset moment. Banks set them for morning opening hours. But if you file the escapement, you can make 8 a.m. become 8:15, or 9 or never, depending on how much you remove. And how long the delay runs." Raymond. "Price died waiting for a vault to open." He died because someone made sure it wouldn't. Leo's pencil moved across the paper, rendering gears and springs with perfect precision. "The question is whether they could reset it afterward to hide the tampering." Ria entered carrying a paper bag that smelled like coffee and something fried. "Brought lunch." "What did I miss?" "Murder," I said. "Excellent. She distributed sandwiches." "I've got news too." Called the county recorder. That demolition permit uses a form number that was discontinued in 1930, and it's signed by Silas alone. But commercial demolition requires dual signatures from both treasurer and inspector. So it's worthless? Legally? Yes, practically? She bit into her sandwich. Silas scheduled the teardown for Monday at dawn. Violet Kincaid's crew starts rigging charges tomorrow. We've got maybe 48 hours before that building's rubble. Leo looked up from his sketch. Then we work tonight. I can build a bypass, a hand-crank mechanism that sinks the escapement manually without triggering any fail-safes. It won't be elegant, but it'll open the outer vault. And the inner chamber, I asked. That will depend on what Mabel designed. But I suspect, he tapped the rubbing, she built redundancy. A mechanism that requires both mechanical precision and moral authorization. The lock won't just ask, do you have the key? It'll ask, should you be opening this? But how does a lock ask that? By making you prove you understand what it's protecting. He showed me his sketch, a series of interlocking gears connected to a hand crank. My father maintained these systems before he died. He used to say that Mabel Witt built her vault like a conscience. It would only open for someone who knew what they were looking for and why it mattered. Ria finished her sandwich and pulled out her notebook. Speaking of conscience, there's a service at First Methodist tomorrow. Reverend Pike's preaching. Word is he's planning to address the disruption certain outsiders are causing. Meaning me. Meaning anyone who asks uncomfortable questions. She met my eyes. June Pike's not just a preacher. He funneled foreclosed properties to Silas's committee in exchange for influence. His blessing made people accept their losses as God's will. That's despicable. That's Redford Crossing. She closed her notebook. I'm attending the service. If he makes any slips, any admission about the foreclosures or the demolition, I want it on record. Leo had returned to his sketching, but he spoke without looking up. If we're doing this tonight, we'll need Amos, and we'll need to be prepared for interference. People who bury secrets don't let them surface without a fight. I thought about Silas's white knuckles, the sheriff's blank note, the dog who wouldn't leave his post. We'll be ready. Sunday morning in Redford Crossing smelled like hymnals and dust. First Methodist sat at the end of Main Street, its white steeple visible from anywhere in town, a finger pointing toward heaven or judgment, depending on your relationship with the congregation. I didn't attend, but Rhea did, camera hidden in her handbag, notebook disguised as a prayer book. She told me about it later. Sitting on the bank's front steps, while Copper dozed between us and the afternoon heat pressed down like a hand, Pike preached on stability, she said. Used the parable of the wise man who built his house on rock, then pivoted to how Redford Crossing had built its recovery on firm foundations and how certain people, she looked at me, were trying to undermine that foundation for personal gain. He named me? Didn't have to. Everyone knew. She flipped open her notebook. But here's the interesting part. After the service, there was a special meeting for select parishioners. Pike collected envelopes, thick ones. I got photos through the sacristy window. She showed me grainy but clear images of Reverend Pike accepting documents from men in Sunday suits. I recognized several faces from the courthouse auction. Those aren't cash donations, I said. No, they're deed transfers. Pike's been collecting them since '29, filing them through a church trust, then redistributing to committee members. It's a shell game. Makes the seizures look voluntary, like faithful farmers gifting land to their spiritual shepherd. I felt sick. That's not just fraud. That's theft wrapped in scripture, which is why I need better proof before I publish. She tucked the photos away. But June, there's something else. After the meeting, I saw Violet Kincaid's crew loading equipment. Silas gave them a revised timeline. They're rigging charges tonight instead of tomorrow. Wants the bank down by Monday dawn. He's accelerating. He's panicking. You've rattled him. She stood, brushing dust from her skirt. I'm going to the county building. If Sheriff Hale left that annex key for you, there's a reason. While I'm checking permit records, you should see what's in that basement. The records annex was exactly what it sounded like. A cramped, low-ceilinged space in the county building's basement where documents went to be forgotten. The key Hale had given me opened a door marked Authorized Personnel Only, which everyone knows means anyone with a good excuse and working lockpicks. Inside, filing cabinets lined the walls like iron soldiers. The air smelled of mildew and ink. A single bulb flickered overhead. I found what I was looking for in the third cabinet. Redford Bank, Closure Proceedings, 1929. The file was thick. Audit reports, asset inventories, depositor complaints. But tucked near the bottom was something else. A legal document on cream-colored paper with elegant typing. Codicil to the last will and testament of Mabel Whitmore Witt, deceased. My hands shook as I read. Let it be known that I, Mabel Whitmore Witt, being of sound mind, do hereby establish a mechanical trust within the vault of Redford Bank. Said trust shall contain debt releases and property deeds for smallholder depositors whose accounts I have personally stewarded. Should the bank's reserves fall below the threshold I have designated, the inner chamber shall seal these documents for a period not to exceed 5 years, after which they may be retrieved and recorded by any person of fiduciary competence who demonstrates understanding of the mechanism's moral purpose. It went on, but the core was clear. Mabel had built a failsafe. If the bank collapsed, the inner vault would protect documents that would forgive farmers' debts and restore their land. It wasn't treasure. It was freedom. And Silas had buried it. I photographed every page with the small camera Rhea had lent me, then returned the file exactly as I'd found it. When I emerged from the basement, Sheriff Hale was waiting in the hallway. Find what you needed? He asked quietly. Yes, thank you, he nodded once. Monday morning I'll be at the bank. Official capacity. Can't promise I can stop the demolition, but I can make sure it's done legally. He handed me something, a second key. Records room at the bank. Northwest corner. Locked since '29. Why are you helping me? His jaw tightened. Because my campaign was funded by men who promised me they'd saved this town. Turns out they just bought it. He met my eyes. Do what you need to do, Miss Calloway. But do it tonight. After dawn Monday, I can't protect you. We gathered at midnight. Amos with his tool case, Leo with his bypass mechanism wrapped in canvas, Rhea with her camera and flash powder, and me with Mabel's codicil memorized and a crowbar for emergencies. Copper waited inside, alert. The town was silent. Even the wind had died. Leo assembled the bypass by lantern light, a hand crank connected to the time lock through a series of reduction gears. This will manually advance the escapement, he explained, voice low. It bypasses the sabotaged tooth entirely, but we only get one attempt. If the mechanism jams, we're done. How long? Amos asked. 4 minutes if everything goes perfectly. 6 if it doesn't. And if someone's cut the counterweights? I'd been thinking about sabotage all evening. Then we'll know very quickly. Leo positioned himself at the crank. Everyone ready? Rhea had her camera aimed. Amos stood by with tools for any emergency adjustments. I held the lantern steady, counting my breaths. Leo began to turn the crank, slowly, evenly. The vault's mechanism responded with a deep, grinding sound, metal on metal, gears meshing after years of stillness. The time lock's hands crept forward. 7:43, 7:44, 7:45, Copper growled. I smelled it before I understood it. The sharp, unmistakable reek of mercaptan, the additive that makes natural gas smell like rot. Gas leak! Keep cranking! Amos was already moving, pulling a wet rag from his case. He followed the smell to a pipe junction near the floor. Line's been cut fresh. Rhea spun toward the windows, flash powder ready. Someone's outside! I grabbed the crowbar and went for the pipe junction Amos had found. The shut-off valve was there, old and stiff, but I threw my weight against it. The metal screamed, then gave. The gas hissed to nothing. 2 minutes, Leo said through gritted teeth. The crank was fighting him now, the mechanism resisting. There! Rhea's flash exploded, throwing the whole room into stark white. Through the window, I glimpsed a figure running, dark coat, a flash of collar. Reverend Pike's assistant. 1 minute. Sweat ran down Leo's face. The time lock hands hit 8 a.m. The vault shuddered. Deep inside, counterweights released with a sound like a sigh. The great wheel lock began to turn on its own, the internal mechanism taking over, and then, click, the outer vault door drifted open 1/2 inch. Amos stepped forward and pulled it wide. Behind it was darkness, and in that darkness, a gleam of brass. There's your inner chamber, he said. The inner chamber was smaller than I'd expected, barely 6 feet deep, with walls of polished steel and a mechanism that looked half safe, half music box. At its center was a phonograph trumpet, brass and perfect, connected to a cylinder player mounted in a moisture-sealed housing. Below it, a narrow drawer sealed with a combination lock. She recorded a message, Rhea breathed. Amos examined the cylinder player. Spring-driven, still wound. Mabel must have set this just before she died. He looked at me. You're building your discovery. You should be the one to hear it. I stepped forward and found the activation lever, a small brass pull engraved with the words, "For the steward who comes after." I pulled. The cylinder began to turn. The trumpet whispered, crackled, then spoke in a woman's voice, clear, warm and certain. If you are hearing this, then Redford Bank has failed, and sufficient time has passed for the matter to be addressed honestly. My name is Mabel Whitmore Witt. I built this bank to serve farmers, not wealthy men. I built this vault to protect them when I could not. I felt tears prick my eyes. Rhea's camera clicked softly. The drawer below contains debt releases and restored deeds for 27 families, whose loans I personally managed. These documents are notarized and legally binding. They are to be recorded in the county registry the moment you open this chamber. Do not delay. Do not negotiate. The men who profited from this bank's collapse will try to stop you. The voice paused. In the silence, I heard Copper's tail thump against the floor. I have also included my personal ledgers showing the true accounting. You will find evidence of manipulated reserves, false transfer stamps, and coordinated withdrawals designed to trigger a run. The rescue committee did not save Redford Crossing. They engineered its failure. My God, Rhea whispered. To the person hearing this, you have a choice. You can take this evidence and make it public, restoring what was stolen. Or you can walk away and let the past stay buried. But know this, a ledger always balances. If not in money, then in truth. Choose wisely. Choose well. And if you choose justice, know that I am grateful. The cylinder wound down to silence. I opened the drawer. Inside were folders, 27 of them, each labeled with a family name. I recognized them all. The Kinseys who lost their dairy. The Romeros, whose apple orchard became Silas's weekend property. My own father's name, Calloway, Edmund, Feed and Grain. Rhea photographed each one, her hands shaking. Amos simply stood with his head bowed, as if in prayer. We record these at dawn, I said. My voice didn't sound like my own. All of them. Public record. And we give copies to every newspaper in 3 states. Silas will stop us, Rhea said. Let him try. I looked at the vault, at Mabel's mechanism, at the evidence of her brilliant, furious compassion. She built this to survive him. Built it to survive all of them. Copper barked once, sharp, urgent, warning. From outside came the sound of boots on gravel. Many boots and voices. Silas's voice raised in anger. I don't care about warrants. That vault opens tonight, or the building comes down with them inside. Dawn was still hours away, but the reckoning had already begun. I met Silas Grange at the bank's entrance, with Mabel Witt's ledger in my hands, and 27 families' futures tucked under my arm. Dawn was still an hour away, but half the town had gathered in the street behind him, men in work clothes and women in house dresses thrown on over nightgowns, drawn by rumor and raised voices. Reverend Pike stood at Silas's right shoulder like a dark apostle. Violet Kincaid and her demolition crew waited by their truck. Unlit dynamite charges stacked in careful rows. Sheriff Tom Hale stood between us, one hand resting on his belt near his revolver, the other holding a lantern that threw shadows across his weathered face. Miss Calloway, Silas said, voice smooth as oil despite the hour. I'm here to prevent a tragedy. That vault contains materials that could destabilize our entire community. I'm asking you, as a friend, to surrender those documents for proper municipal review. These documents are already proper, I said. Notarized by Mabel Witt, sealed in a mechanical trust, and legally designated for public record. I'm taking them to the county recorder at dawn. The county recorder answers to me. The law doesn't. Silas's smile never wavered, but something cold flickered behind his eyes. He took a step forward. Sheriff Hale shifted to block him. Silas, Hale said quietly, don't. Tom, I'm trying to protect this town from a woman who doesn't understand the delicate balance we've achieved. That vault contains nothing but old debts and older resentments. Recording those documents will tear Redford Crossing apart, or it'll make it whole. I held up the ledger. This contains Mabel Witt's true accounting. Manipulated reserves, false transfer stamps, coordinated withdrawals designed to trigger a bank run. You didn't rescue this town, Mr. Grange. You engineered its collapse and bought the pieces, the crowd murmured. I saw faces in the lantern light, recognition, anger, dawning comprehension. Silas lunged for the ledger. Hale caught his wrist. That's evidence in a potential fraud investigation. Touch it and I'll arrest you. On what grounds? Pike stepped forward, his voice ringing with practiced authority. Sheriff, this woman has broken into a condemned building, tampered with a sealed vault, and stolen private banking records. She's the criminal here. The building's hers by legal deed, Hale said. The vault's unsealing was authorized by the structure's owner. And those records? He looked at me. Those are public trust documents, aren't they, Miss Calloway? Designated by the bank's founder for public recording in the event of institutional failure, I confirmed. Everything we've done is legal. Can you say the same about that demolition permit, Reverend? I'd been carrying the forged permit since Rhea photographed it. Now I held it up, and even in the dim light the pencil signature was obvious. That permit, I said loud enough for everyone to hear, uses a discontinued form number. It's signed by one person when law requires two, and it's written in pencil, which means it can be erased, altered, or backdated at will. Violet Kincaid pushed through the crowd. She was a tall woman, broad-shouldered and sun-weathered, with the hands of someone who'd built and destroyed more structures than most people ever entered. She took the permit from me, pulled a small notebook from her pocket, and compared numbers. Her expression darkened. "Mr. Grange," she said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that came from knowing exactly what you were talking about. "This permit's worthless. Wrong form, wrong signatures, wrong everything. If my crew brings this building down on this paperwork, we're liable for illegal demolition. Violet, I assure you, no." She cut him off. "I don't work for liars. And I sure as hell don't blow up buildings so rich men can hide evidence." She turned to her crew. "Pack it up. We're done here." The dynamite charges stayed in their crates. The crowd's murmur grew louder. Silas's composure finally cracked. "You're making a mistake. All of you. That vault contains nothing but chaos. Those deeds are ancient history. You can't simply undo 4 years of legitimate transactions because some woman decided to play detective with old banking records. Those transactions weren't legitimate," Rhea said, stepping out of the bank's entrance with her camera. "I've been documenting everything. The forged transfer stamps, the deed laundering through Pike's Church Trust, the coordinated foreclosures." She held up her notebook. "And I've got corroborating evidence from the county annex showing that reserves were deliberately depleted before the crash." "Lies." Pike's voice shook. "You're a scandal ragstringer trying to sell papers with sensational—" "I'm a journalist." Rhea's voice was steel. "And tomorrow morning 3 newspapers will run this story with full documentation. The question is whether Redford Crossing faces its past honestly or tries to bury it one more time." Silas looked around at the crowd, at faces that had trusted him, voted for him, believed his promises of stability. I saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. He was cornered, and cornered men are dangerous. "Sheriff Hale," he said slowly, "I'm calling for a citizen's intervention. These women have unlawfully opened a vault that was sealed for public safety. They've stolen municipal property, and they're threatening the economic stability of this entire county. I demand you arrest them immediately." Hale looked at Silas for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of handcuffs. My heart stopped, but Hale didn't move toward me. He stepped toward Silas. "Silas Grange, you're under arrest for permit fraud, attempted destruction of legal documents, and conspiracy to commit theft by deception. You have the right to remain silent, and I suggest you use it." The crowd erupted. Some cheered. Others shouted in confusion or anger. Pike tried to intervene, but Hale fixed him with a look that could have stopped a train. "Reverend, if I find evidence linking you to any of this, you'll join him. I suggest you get very comfortable with prayer." As Hale secured Silas's wrists, I noticed something. The eastern sky was beginning to pale. "Dawn was coming, Sheriff," I said. "We need to get these documents to the recorder's office. Now." Hale nodded. "Violet, can you and your crew escort these ladies? Make sure no one interferes." Violet grinned. "Be our pleasure." We moved through the crowd, me with the ledgers, Rhea with her camera and notes, Amos and Leo flanking us like guards, Copper trotting at my heels, and Violet's entire demolition crew forming a protective cordon. Behind us, I heard Silas shouting about lawsuits and injunctions, but his voice was fading. The vault had opened. The truth was coming out, and Redford Crossing would never be the same. The county recorder's office was a cramped room on the 2nd floor of the municipal building, all filing cabinets and dust motes and a single clerk who looked like we'd just interrupted his morning coffee. "We need to record these," I said, spreading Mabel's documents across his desk as the sun's first rays slanted through the window. The clerk, his nameplate read Bernard Watts, blinked at the stack of papers, then at the small crowd filling his doorway. "It's 6 in the morning. Office opens at 6, Rhea said. "Says so on your door." "Yes, but I usually have time to—" He stopped, focusing on the documents. "Are these deed releases?" 27 of them, I said. "Legally executed by Mabel Witt before her death, held in sealed trust, and now ready for public record. We need them stamped, logged, and entered into the official registry. This will take hours, days even. Each one needs to be reviewed, verified." Sheriff Hale appeared in the doorway, hat in hand. "Bernard, these documents are part of an active fraud investigation. I need them logged with timestamps as of this morning. No delays." Bernard looked from Hale to the papers to me. His hands shook slightly as he reached for his stamp. "I'll need to verify the notarizations. They're genuine," I said. "Mabel Witt's signature is on file." "Compare them," he did, one by one, pulling archived documents, checking signatures, dates, seal impressions. The sun climbed higher. More people gathered in the hallway outside. Word was spreading. When Bernard stamped the first deed, Kinsey, Thomas and Martha, dairy farm, 40 acres. A woman in the hallway began to cry. "That's my parents," she whispered. "We lost that farm in 29. "You're getting it back," I said. Bernard worked faster after that. Each stamp felt like justice rendered. Each entry in the logbook felt like a wound beginning to heal. Rhea photographed the process, her flashbulbs popping at intervals, creating a visual record that no one could dispute. We were halfway through when a man in an expensive suit pushed through the crowd. "Stop immediately." He slapped a document on Bernard's desk. "Emergency injunction from Judge Patterson. All recordings are to cease pending a judicial review of the document's validity." Hale picked up the injunction, read it, then looked at the man. "Who are you?" "Marcus Finch, attorney for Mr. Grange and the Redford Rescue Committee. That injunction is legally binding. It's also improperly filed," Rhea said. She'd been reading over Hale's shoulder. "Judge Patterson's jurisdiction doesn't cover property disputes. That's Judge Harmon's court." Finch's confidence wavered. "Judge Patterson has discretionary, and this filing is dated yesterday," Hale interrupted. "But today's the first business day of the week." "How'd you get a judge to sign an emergency order on Sunday?" The lawyer had no answer. Violet spoke from the doorway. "I've got something to add. My crew witnessed Mr. Grange ordering his assistant to cut a gas line at the bank last night. Attempted sabotage, attempted arson. We're willing to testify." Finch paled. "That's It's relevant to credibility," Hale said. "And right now, the only people I'm inclined to believe are the ones who didn't spend last night trying to blow up buildings." He handed the injunction back to Finch. "This is denied pending proper filing." "Bernard, keep recording." The lawyer tried to argue, but Hale physically escorted him out. The crowd in the hallway parted, and I heard a few people murmur approval. Bernard resumed stamping. "Romero, Miguel and Elena, Orchard, 20 acres. Calloway, Edmund, commercial property, Main Street, my father's store. The place where I'd learned to count inventory and balance books, and understand that numbers told stories, if you knew how to read them. Gone in 1929. Now restored in ink and law and public record." I couldn't speak. Rhea squeezed my hand. By noon, all 27 deeds were recorded. Bernard's logbook showed them in permanent sequence, time-stamped, officially witnessed. Rhea posted copies in the public notice board downstairs, and a crowd gathered to read names. Their own names, their neighbors' names, their parents' names. I saw tears. I saw anger directed at the right targets for the first time in years. I saw something I hadn't expected. Hope, Miss Calloway. A woman touched my arm. She was elderly, thin, with hands that had worked hard for decades. "My husband's name is on your list. He died thinking he'd lost everything. Thank you for giving him his legacy back." I didn't know what to say. "Thank Mabel Witt. She built the mechanism." "I just opened it." "No," the woman said firmly. "She built the lock. You had the courage to turn the key. We were leaving the building when Copper started barking. Not his warning bark, his alarm bark. The one that meant danger, close and immediate. I smelled smoke." "The bank," Rhea said, already running. We sprinted back through streets that were filling with midday foot traffic. Smoke was rising from the direction of Main Street. Dark, ugly smoke that meant more than just wood burning. The bank was on fire. Not a catastrophic blaze, but enough. Flames licked from a broken window on the second floor, and smoke poured from the entrance. A small crowd had gathered, but no one was trying to enter. "The vault," I said. "There's more inside. A second drawer Mabel mentioned. You can't go in there." Hale grabbed my arm. I pulled free. "If it burns, the evidence burns with it. June." The structure's compromised. But I was already moving, wet kerchief tied over my nose and mouth. Copper at my heels, because the dog was either brave or stupid or understood what we were fighting for. The smoke inside was thick and hot. I stayed low, feeling my way along the walls I'd memorized. The vault was still open, its steel door immune to flame. But the records room, the northwest, corner where Hale had given me access, was where the fire had started, deliberate, targeted. I found the second drawer, right where Mabel's phonograph had said it would be, a slim compartment hidden behind the debt release folders, sealed with a combination lock. The mechanism was hot to the touch. I tried Mabel's birthday, her bank's founding date, the date her husband died. Nothing. Then I remembered the codicil. Choose wisely. Choose well. I tried the numbers from her signature. MWW Sadis 3333. In the alphabet, the lock clicked open. Inside was a single phonograph cylinder and a ledger marked Trust Provisions, Emergency, Succession. I grabbed both and ran. Leo and Amos met me at the entrance with a water hose they'd connected to the livery's well. The fire wasn't massive yet. It could be stopped, but it needed more than 3 people. "We need a bucket line," I shouted over the roar and smoke. Violet was already organizing it. Her crew, the people who'd been at the recorder's office, the woman whose parents' farm we'd restored, the man whose father had died thinking himself a failure. They formed a line from the well to the bank, passing buckets hand to hand, water sloshing and soaking clothes, and no one complaining, because this building, this broken, compromised, resurrected building, had become something more than bricks and mortar. It had become their witness. The fire department arrived 20 minutes later, but by then the worst was contained. Smoke damage, water damage, a section of floor that would need replacing. But the vault stood, the evidence stood, and I stood in the street, soot-faced and shaking, with Mabel Witt's final message clutched in my hands. We played the second cylinder in the bank's lobby while the building still steamed and dripped. The crowd from the bucket line had stayed, joined by others who'd heard about the fire, the deeds, the truth finally surfacing. Mabel's voice filled the space one last time, clear and unyielding. "If you're hearing this second message, then someone has tried to destroy what I built." I expected they would. Powerful men don't surrender power gracefully. A few people in the crowd muttered agreement. The ledger with this cylinder contains instructions for establishing a community trust, a bank owned by depositors, not distant shareholders. Use the building, use whatever assets remain, and use the residual funds I've set aside in bonds that mature this year. They're detailed in the back pages. I flipped the ledger open. The bonds were there, carefully noted. They'd matured in 1933. At current value, they'd provide seed money for a genuine community institution. To whoever opens this vault, you're not just a lockpicker. You're a steward. That's what I tried to be, and I failed. But failure isn't permanent if someone comes after you and finishes the work. Don't let the past be erased. Don't let the powerful rewrite the ledger. And above all, teach others to read the numbers for themselves. That's the only way to stay free. The cylinder wound down. In the silence that followed, I heard someone clapping, then another person, then the whole crowd, applause rising like a wave. Sheriff Hale pushed through to where I stood. "Miss Calloway, I need that ledger as evidence, but I promise you it'll be used for prosecution, not burial." I handed it to him.
"Silas?"
"He's in custody, along with Pike's assistant who we caught with an empty kerosene can. Pike himself is being questioned. The district attorney's very interested in those deed transfers through the church trust, and the demolition. Cancelled. Violet's agreed to assess the structure properly and provide recommendations for restoration instead." Hale almost smiled. "Looks like you own a building worth saving, Miss Calloway." "It's not mine to keep," I said. "It's going to be what Mabel intended, a community trust, Over the next weeks, Redford Crossing transformed. The 27 families took possession of their restored properties. Lawsuits were filed against the rescue committee members who'd profited from illegal foreclosures. Reverend Pike resigned from First Methodist, and the church's deacons began the painful process of accounting for where all those donated deeds had gone. Ria's story ran in 7 newspapers. The Kansas City Journal gave it front-page placement with the headline, "Vault of Justice, How One Woman's 40-cent Purchase Exposed a Town's Dark Secret. Leo Restored the Vault's Mechanisms to Perfect Working Order," and mounted a plaque, "Mabel Whitmore. Whit, 1889-1928. She built a lock to protect the powerless, Amos trained. Me in proper vault maintenance. Every lock's a responsibility," he said. "You're the steward now. Treat it with respect." Violet's crew repaired the fire damage and reinforced the structure. The building would stand for another 100 years, she assured me. Long enough to serve its purpose. The Mabel Witt Community Trust opened in September 1933, with 27 founding families as equal shareholders and me as managing director. We started small, savings accounts for farmers, low-interest loans for equipment, financial literacy classes taught in the very lobby where Silas had tried to silence the truth. Copper became the bank's unofficial mascot, sleeping by the vault door and greeting depositors with his lopsided grin. And late one evening, when everyone had gone home and the building was quiet, I discovered something. Behind the now empty second drawer, barely visible in the lamplight, was another hairline seam in the steel. Another hidden compartment. This one too small to hold much, maybe just a note or a key. Or another message from a woman who'd understood that crises came in cycles and that preparation was an act of love. I ran my fingers along the seam, feeling the precision of Mabel's work. I could open it now if I wanted. The combination would be something I could figure out. She'd designed this for me, or someone like me, to find, but I decided to wait. Not because I was afraid of what was inside. Because Mabel had taught me something important. Systems fail. Banks collapse. Powerful men rewrite history. And when that happens, you need a mechanism that outlasts the crisis, something that clicks open at the right moment, in the right hands, with the right intentions. She'd built one vault for the Depression. Maybe she'd built another for whatever came next. I locked the outer vault door, checked the time lock, ticking perfectly now, Leo's repair holding true, and walked out into the warm autumn evening. Main Street was quiet. A few lights burned in windows. Somewhere a dog barked. Not Copper. He was asleep on his blanket by the vault. Some other dog doing its job, keeping watch. Redford Crossing had a long way to go. Trust, once broken, doesn't rebuild overnight. But we'd made a start. We'd proven that the ledger could be balanced, that debts could be forgiven, that the past didn't have to strangle the future, and if another panic came and Mabel had been right, there would always be another panic. Well, now Redford Crossing had something it hadn't had in 1929. It had a community that knew how to open locked doors when the truth needed to breathe. I went home to the room I rented above the pharmacy, made notes for tomorrow's loan committee meeting, and slept the dreamless sleep of someone who'd finally finished a job that had waited 4 years to be done. In the morning, I'd start again. That's what stewardship means. Not ownership, not glory, just the steady work of maintaining mechanisms that protect people who can't protect themselves. Mabel Witt had taught me that, and I'd spend the rest of my life passing it forward. Redford Crossing. 1943, 10 years later, the Mabel Witt Community Trust survived the rest of the Depression, then the war. We sent sons to Europe and daughters to factories, and the vault held their savings until they came home. I'm older now, greyer, but my hands are still steady enough to count bills and audit ledgers. The bank has 3 employees and serves 47 families. We don't make anyone rich. We just keep them from going under. Amos died last year peacefully, with his tools arranged on his workbench in perfect order. He left me his locked notebooks and a letter that said, "You were the right person. Thank you for proving it." Leo maintains the vault every spring, treating the mechanism with the reverence it deserves. Ria won a journalism award and moved to Chicago, but she sends clippings, stories of corruption exposed, systems reformed, the powerful held to account. Copper lived to 16, which is forever in dog years. We buried him under the oak tree beside the bank, and some days I swear I still hear his tail thumping when I work late. And the third compartment, the one I never opened, I'm saving it for my successor, for whoever comes after me when I'm too old or too tired or simply gone. I've written instructions on how to find it, what it might mean, and why some secrets are worth keeping until they're worth revealing. Because Mabel was right. The panics come, the powerful grab. The ledgers get cooked, but if you build the right mechanism, if you design it with precision and courage and love, then somewhere in the darkness of a vault, there's always a lock waiting to be opened by someone brave enough to turn the key. And when they do, the truth clicks free. Every single time. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.